Alright, well, I'm going to tell you guys a story today. Don't know if y'all know that, but I'm going to tell you a story. So, I remember it like it was yesterday, although I guess it's been a few years. But there was this guy who was traveling around, and he was fairly well known for what he was doing. But we really didn't know who he was. We were still a little confused on what he was doing and who he was. His name was Jesus, and on this particular day, he was coming into my city. He was coming into Jericho. So, I see him in the distance, and he's coming up, and this guy starts yelling to him. He says, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Now, I recognized his voice because I had heard this guy before. He was the blind man who would beg outside of Jericho. Everybody in Jericho knew who he was. He sat there all the time. But at this point, the crowd was so enamored with who Jesus was, they tried to get this guy to be quiet so he wouldn't disturb Jesus. Which I thought was a little weird, but, I went with it because that's what the crowd's doing. But it didn't work, because after he was silenced, he yelled out even louder. He was like, "Son of David, have mercy on me." So at this point, Jesus looks at him and has him come over. And he asks, and I don't see what's going on because they're starting to whisper now. It's not exactly loud enough for me to hear. I'm still in the city. And he talks to him for a second, and all of a sudden, the guy starts running around like he's super excited. And then I hear the entire crowd start to praise God. Well, now I'm really confused. I don't know what's going on. And while this is happening, all of a sudden this little short guy starts to climb me. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever had someone climb you, but it's awkward. So here's Zacchaeus sitting in a branch on my left-hand side. And he's a tax collector. And I don't know if you guys know about tax collectors in these times, but they weren't exactly good people. They would steal, they would collect taxes for the Roman government, and they would take a little bit extra for themselves. And not only was this guy a tax collector, he was the chief tax collector. He was a bad dude. Fortunately, he was a little short, so he didn't weigh that much on my branch, but he was still there. And I didn't know what he was doing at first, but then I noticed he was looking the same direction I was. We were both looking at Jesus coming up. So as the crowd and Jesus enter, I realized what happened, why they were praising God. The man that was blind a few minutes ago is no longer blind. He's walking around like he can see perfectly fine. Then I noticed Jesus is looking at me. Man, am I excited. I am like the greatest fig tree in the history of fig trees in Jericho. So I am ready for the blessing that Jesus has for me. And then all of a sudden, it says, "Zacchaeus, come down." Now, I have mixed emotions at this point. Because, first off, I'm sad. I was ready for the blessing of my figs. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I was happy because this little short man is no longer sitting on my left branch. It felt a little bit better as he came down. But I noticed something. The crowd this time wasn't super excited. Outside, after he had healed the man, there was great rejoicing and praising God. But this time, after Jesus tells Zacchaeus to come down, he says, the crowd starts murmuring and they're upset. And Zacchaeus makes a declaration. He says, "I'm going to give half of everything that I have to the poor. And if I've ever cheated anyone, I'm going to give it back 4 times over." So after that, Jesus says, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Like I said before this instance, I didn't really know who Jesus was. I knew about him. I knew he was a miracle worker. I was ready for him to bless me. But at this moment, I learned who he was. Jesus didn't care about what the crowd was saying. When it came to the blind man, he didn't care that they were trying to silence the blind man. He called him out and healed him. And then with Zacchaeus, he accepted him even though the crowd was still murmuring. I guess really the idea is you are accepted by Jesus. And there's two different areas this applies to. The first one, maybe you're on the outside looking in and you don't know who this Jesus guy is. Well, I can tell you today that you are accepted by Jesus and that he loves you just the way you are. But there's another group also. Zacchaeus and the blind man weren't the only people there that day. There was also the crowd. And see, for some reason they forgot from the time the blind man was healed to the time Zacchaeus was called down that Jesus accepted everyone. So maybe you're a part of the crowd today and you look at someone and you say, I don't know why God's doing that with them. For you, it's important to remember that you are accepted by Jesus, no matter who you are, and so are they.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Yeah.